Paris, June 9, 8 p.m. The results of the European Parliament elections were made public. And in France, the party of President Emmanuel Macron garnered 14.6% of the vote, 8 points less than in 2019. The French population had turned away from Macron. The Socialist Party came out with 13.8% of the vote, and Rebellious France, a far-left party, 9.89% of the vote. The moderate right party, the Republicans, received only 7.25% of the vote and continued to slide towards insignificance. The right-wing National Rally received 31.3% of the vote, 10 points more than in 2019, an extremely high result for a long marginalized party. Macron's policies were clearly rejected by the French electorate. A recent poll showed that only 31% of French people said they were satisfied with his management of the country. He could have decided to wait. He was re-elected in 2022 and can remain president until 2027. His party did not have an absolute majority in the National Assembly, France's parliament, but was the leading party, which could also remain in place until 2027. Macron could not ignore that the result obtained by the Rebellious France party was worrying. Rebellious France is not only a far-left party, it is also a party tinged with anti-Semitism and counts supporters of Islamism and terrorist groups such as Hamas in its ranks. Macron also did not ignore that the National Rally's growing support has come from all those who rejected his management of the country and were apparently extremely worried about what France is becoming. Macron could see, according to polls, that if legislative elections were organized immediately, his Together party would lose. Rebellious France would gain even more political weight, and the National Rally could win an absolute majority. He was also aware that the Olympic Games were about to take place in Paris, and that since 2017, when he came to power, demonstrations and riots in France have been frequent. Any decision on his part could create massive disorder at an extremely bad time. He nevertheless decided to dissolve the National Assembly and hold legislative elections on very short notice. He did not warn anyone. Prime Minister Gabriel Attal, whom he appointed just 6 months earlier, learned of the decision while speaking on television. He was not shy about showing his anger. Other members of the government learned of the decision at the same time as Attal. On June 30th, the first round of elections led to the expected results. Together, Macron's party received a slightly larger share of votes than in the European Parliament elections, but a far smaller than in France's 2022 parliamentary elections, and was heading towards a scathing defeat. Rebellious France managed quickly to form a left-wing coalition, the New Popular Front, which it dominated and on which it imposed an extremely radical program. It promised large tax increases, disarming the police, and immediate regularization of all illegal immigrants in the country. The left-wing coalition has clearly been gaining ground. Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the leader of Rebellious France, to emphasize that he accepts anti-Semitism and supports Hamas and Islamism, gave a speech on June 30th about his party's results in the first round, while standing on stage next to an Islamist pro-Hamas activist, newly elected member of European Parliament Rima Hassan. Hassan wore a keffiyeh and displayed on her clothes a small Palestinian flag. The National Rally won an even better result than it had in the European elections. A third of voters gave it their support. The National Rally was well ahead in all electoral districts in the country, except in big cities. It clearly looked able to win a majority in the second round. Macron then decided to wage total war against the National Rally. He described it in extreme terms and used vocabulary as radical as that used by the leaders of Rebellious France. He could see that the National Rally has a conservative program that is perfectly respectful of institutions, but nevertheless falsely described it as a party belonging to a fascist, extreme right, and a threat to democracy. He warned that if the National Rally came to power, the survival of the French Republic would be at stake, and added that all parties, including Rebellious France, must unite against the National Rally to defeat it. An unprecedented situation in France took shape. All the candidates from other parties were asked to withdraw from the election and support the candidate of another party better placed to defeat the National Rally candidate, even if the better-placed candidate belonged to a party that they totally rejected. Some candidates from Together asked people to vote for Rebellious France candidates, and some Rebellious France candidates asked people to vote for Together candidates. The Republicans also participated in the mayhem. Former President François Hollande, running for a seat in the National Assembly, supported Rebellious France. The French mainstream media contributed to the operation and fueled fear of fascism. They accepted the propaganda. Rappers, who are widely listened to in Islamic no-go zones, released a song that calls for the murder of Jordan Bardella, the president of the National Rally, the rape of party leader Marine Le Pen, and the elimination of Zionist Jews. The song was described by some journalists as a courageous song of resistance and was broadcast over the radio. One of the lines from the song goes, "From the Jordan to the Seine, Palestine will be free," a call not just for the destruction of Israel, but for the submission of France to Sharia law and Islam. On the evening of the second runoff round, which was held July 7th, it became clear that scaring the public had worked. The National Rally won only 142 seats out of 577. Macron's party, together, lost a third of its seats and sank from 245 to 166 seats. Prime Minister Gabriel Attal's anger is apparently still intact. The other members of the government are also less than euphoric. They knew that Attal could resign soon. He resigned on July 16th and remains in caretaker role, and that it will be the end of the government of which they are part. Any support that Macron still had on June 9th has almost completely evaporated. Macron is alone, discredited. The left, with 184 seats, became the largest group in the National Assembly. Rebellious France, its most powerful component. The party's leaders present themselves as the spearhead of the anti-fascist struggle, claim that they must govern the country, and that to remove them would be to make concessions to fascism. They do not bother to hide their anti-Semitism and their support for Hamas and Islam. One of them, Raphael Arnaud, a leader of the Antifa movement in France, is on the list established by the French police of people dangerous for the security of the country. This is the first time that a leader of a movement that is officially dangerous for the security of the country has become a member of the National Assembly. France has become almost ungovernable. No political party has a majority. No party can form a government coalition without having to renounce the most essential part of its program. The power acquired by rebellious France means that a government which does not have its approval cannot claim to govern. In addition, no new parliamentary elections can be organized for a year. France seems to be condemned to political instability and disorder. National Rally leaders emphasize that their party received the largest number of votes and that Macron's maneuvering stole the election from them. Polls have shown for months that a majority of French people would like a firm fight against crime, a stop to illegal immigration, and an end to the Islamization of the country. All these points were on the program of the National Rally. By having strengthened rebellious France, Macron created a situation where there will undoubtedly be less fight against crime, more illegal immigration, and increase of Islamization. Economic data shows that France is currently in a recession. The country's debt is growing. The debt has increased by 30% in 7 years. Year after year, the government budget is in a deficit that is increasing. By the end of 2024, France's budget deficit will be 5.1%. Every year, on average, 500,000 new immigrants, mainly from the Muslim world, settle in France. Hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants reside in the country. Few are expelled. Islamic no-go zones are growing. On the evening of July 7th, rebellious France organized a large rally in Paris's Place de la République. Palestinian flags were everywhere. French flags almost nowhere. Speakers presented hateful slogans against the National Rally, Israel, Jewish journalists, and the police. Demonstrators burned cars and trash cans and destroyed stores. Many French Jews are aghast. Before the elections, Nazi hunter Serge Klarsfeld and the former President Representative Council of French Jewish Institutions, Dr. Richard Praskier, said that, faced with the rise of Islamic left-wing anti-Semitism, they had decided to vote for the National Rally. In fact, the National Rally throughout this period was the only party to explicitly denounce Islamic left-wing anti-Semitism. Commenting on the results of the election, the Rabbi Moshe Sebag, of the Grand Synagogue of Paris, said, "There is no future for Jews in France." He recommended that Jews who could, should leave France. The Olympic Games, which ended on August, featured in the opening ceremony a decapitated Queen Marie Antoinette, carrying her severed head in her arms, and a blasphemous reenactment of the Last Supper by drag queens, with a nearly naked man, painted blue, served on a platter. The author Eric Zimmer responded on X. The great architects of this spectacle, Macron, Boucheron, Hidalgo, etc., have taken the beauty of Paris, the most beautiful setting in the world, hostage. But these people are not us. They don't represent us. They are foreign to what we are, enemies of what we were. They want to impose on us a vision of man that is not ours. At the end of the ceremony, Macron, to loud boos from the crowd, declared the Paris Olympic Games open. The columnist Ivan Ryafal, in a book published 7 years ago, analyzing the first decisions taken by Macron at the start of his presidency, noted that Macron had acted impulsively, had sought to destroy the political parties that had governed France for decades, seemed to have no defined guideline, and seemed to despise the French population. Ryafal added, "His reign will end in a nightmare."